Hey guys, it's Andrea here at VW Family Farm. Sorry it's been a little bit since I filmed a video. It has been super busy here at the farm this summer, but I got one for you today. So I'm going to kind of try to talk you through start to finish of raising meat birds. It's completely different than raising laying hens, and I think if you go into it thinking it's going to be the same, you are in for, I don't want to say a rude awakening, but you're in for a lot of work. And the first time we did it, it was a disaster. So you could be in for a disaster if you don't go into it knowing what to expect. First off, what do I even mean when I talk about a meat bird? Well, it's kind of like the difference between beef cows and dairy cows. Can you eat a dairy cow? Can you eat a dairy steer just like you can a beef steer? Absolutely. In fact, we do process some of our excess Jersey steers from time to time. The meat is just as good. The steaks might be a bit smaller, and there is a noticeable difference in the amount of meat on a dairy carcass as opposed to a beef carcass. They're bred for milk production. They're not bred to produce like high amounts of meat. It's kind of the same type deal when you talk about chickens. When you talk about meat chickens, they're breeds that are designed for meat. They put on lots of meat and flesh quickly, as opposed to an egg layer. You might think they're a big bird, and then if you ever pick one up, there's like nothing to them. They're just feel like bones. They're designed for egg production. Now, will a meat breed lay an egg? Yes, some of them more easily and more quickly than others. If you raise the standard meat bird Cornish cross, what people call broilers, it takes them quite a long time to lay an egg. And a lot of times they die before they ever get to that point because they're not designed to live a long life. Can you eat an egg-laying chicken? Absolutely. There's just not much meat on them. So when I talk about meat birds, I'm talking about those that are designed or bred for meat production. There's also dual purpose breeds. We've raised those ourselves, like Buff Orpingtons. They'll lay eggs, but they also have a bigger carcass for meat. They're still not going to be anywhere comparable to something that is like a Cornish cross or a Freedom Ranger or something like that. But just for the purposes of this video, when I'm talking about meat birds, I'm most likely talking about Cornish cross because that is what we have raised for our market and things. We've also tried some heritage breeds. We've tried the American breasts, things like that. There's just nothing that compares to the Cornish cross as far as the efficiency and the quickness of raising them. Now, taste and the fact that, say, Freedom Rangers act more like normal chickens and all that, that's a whole different conversation. But as far as getting chickens to the market, Cornish cross seems to be the fastest and most efficient. Anyway, that's a whole different discussion, and people have strong opinions on that. We've done both, but for the purposes of this summer, we're raising Cornish cross. So to start with, you order them and they come in the mail, and they usually take, after they are hatched and they mail them, they take a couple days to arrive. And they go in here. This is our brooder. I'm going to take you inside here. So right now we have turkeys in here, and we have some little black copper Morans and different laying breeds because we're on a break from Cornish cross right now because we're going to be out of town for a bit. But this is where they go. There's a watering system in here. This is lowered down to the floor, and they can peck at these and basically water themselves. There's food in here. There's heaters on. It's just the ideal place for them to brood in here because you want to keep them warm. Those are the heaters. There's feeders and waterers, different things. Sometimes we'll start out with these little 1-gallon waterers in here just to get them used to drinking. You see those are not being used right now. They've flicked some chips up in there, but generally this is just a really good starting point for them. One thing I would say, order more than you want to wind up with. They do die, and it is not uncommon. Any breed of chicken or turkey can be a bit difficult to keep alive on 100% from the time that they're hatched until the amount that you get raised. So start with more than you want to end up with. So we're going to head back to the place they go after the brooder. They stay in there about 4 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks, and then they move back into the pasture in a schooner. So one thing that we do that will be different based upon your situation is when we order our birds in the spring, we kind of have to work backwards. So I have to call the processor. We have a USDA poultry processor that's about 45 minutes from our house, which I'm so thankful for. I don't know if you have anything like that near you. If you're going to raise a large quantity, that might interest you. We used to process our own. That's all we ever did. We have the equipment to do it. But this year alone, we are raising between 1,500 and 2,000 chickens. And so that's just beyond Ben and I's ability to do that, especially he has a full-time job. So it's just not feasible, maybe in the future. But our processor does a phenomenal job cutting them up, making all kinds of different things that I just know we wouldn't make ourselves. Not that we wouldn't have the ability to, I just know we wouldn't. Like in our last round, we got country style sausage. They have every flavor of sausages you can imagine. They make them into links or ground. They do the hearts and livers and feet. And again, we can do all of those things. It's just, I don't know if we would. And so this is more efficient for us at the stage that we're at. But that being said, we have to work backwards. We have to start with our appointments when we want them to be. So I've kind of mapped out our schedule in the spring of how this could all work together. It's a finely tuned instrument to get all this to fit and work together. And then if I can get those appointments when I want them, then I start trying to get my birds. So if I don't have appointments, it does me no good to get the birds. So once I have all of that set out, and even before all that, when I'm mapping it out, I have to decide, do we want to do this to where we leave some in the brooder for 4 weeks, move them out to the schooner, have a week in between to clean up the brooder and prepare for the next batch, and then go ahead and get it? Or do I want the brooder and schooner completely empty? Like, do I want to raise a batch from start to finish before I start the next batch? That's not as efficient for us. What we typically do is we have a batch. The first batch will go in the brooder. Then 4 weeks later, they move out and the next batch is essentially on the way. So we have a turnaround time over usually a weekend to get the brooder spruced back up, whether that means we're cleaning it completely out, or if it's okay enough that we can just top it off with new shavings or whatever, so the next batch can go in. And once we get rolling, we've got a batch coming every 4 weeks. So when one's leaving, that means one is moving out of the brooder into the schooner and one is arriving. So there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of things happening, all within a short amount of time. So this is the schooner. It is an old greenhouse frame that has a silage tarp on top of it with the white showing so it won't be as hot. It has had an automatic waterer before, but it's been through a few storms. So we are back here filling up water for the second time today because it's over 100 degrees in Arkansas today. You can see they are hot, but they just do that in the summer as well. They're not like about to heat stroke or anything. They're in the shade. There's a breeze through here, but this is their second stop on the journey. So they spend about roughly 4 weeks. If it's a 7-week span that we have them, that's their total time they're going to be with us. If that's the processing date I got, it might be 3.5 weeks in the brooder, but typically it's 4 in there and around 4 out here. So these are going in a week. These are about almost 7 weeks old. They're pretty good size, but they're going to grow rapidly even more over the next week. So they're looking great. And this is a really, really nice piece of equipment we have for them. We move this twice a week. We move it on Monday evenings and Thursday evenings. Our market is open Tuesdays and Fridays, so that's just how it is. There is 300 of them in each batch. We ordered 400 and sold 100 out of each batch. So this is what 300 looks like. They're all up in this grass. But you can see there's plenty of room in here. And Ben has put videos out about this schooner before, so if you're interested in the size and the dimensions and all the things, you can go watch videos about the schooner. But it's pretty large, but it could hold a whole lot more than 300 as well. So I did some numbers for you guys, and I've already processed 2 batches this summer, trying to keep an eye on this water as I talk to you guys. But the first batch we fed, they were right at like 8 weeks old, maybe a few days less. The second batch was like a little over 8 weeks old. That's just how the appointments fell. So really within a week of each other, not a whole lot of difference to speak of. And both batches ate right around 13 pounds per bird. Okay, so when I get to the end of this and we haul these to the processor, which what that looks like for us, taking them to a processor, you have to have some sort of crates or something to put them in. So that's another job. But even if you're going to raise for yourself, you've got to figure out, how am I going to get these from the pen that they're in? Even if there's 25 of them to the processing area, you're going to need some sort of a crate or transportation. And all of these things I'm telling you on this video can be scaled way down. This could be a movable chicken tractor that you move with your 2 hands. We moved this thing with a tractor or a truck or something like that. It takes 2 people, 1 person behind them, shooing the birds along while someone else is pulling. But you could scale all of this down. Your brooder could be a wooden box with a heat mat or something like that. But I'm always looking for reliable information about like how much to expect meat birds to eat. And I will tell you guys, I am a record keeper. I'm a documenter. I'm a note writer. So I just took notes these last few batches so I would know for myself. And I didn't try to like give a certain amount a day. I just gave them what they would eat and tried to keep food in front of them. If they had a little bit left the next day, I called that good. It's not like I'm trying to keep the feeders full all the time, but I'm trying to keep it to where I know they didn't run out sometime hours before I came and fed again. So with that being said, they ate about 13 pounds per bird. So I don't have numbers for you on feed costs because your feed costs are going to be different than mine based on what you're feeding. Are you buying in bulk? Are you buying non-GMO? All that. But if you're wanting a guesstimate, if you're thinking about doing this, 13 pounds per bird, everything I read online was like 10 pounds, 12 pounds. So I feel like if you do 13, you may wind up with money left over or a little bit of feed left over. And in my book, that's a win. Before we go any further, there was a year or 2 that I swore I would never do these again, that I told Ben I don't want to do these. I don't like chickens that much, especially meat chickens. They're not as enjoyable as laying hens. And I just said, I don't ever want to do that again. It's nasty. It's hot usually when you're doing it. You can see my face is red right now. It's labor intensive, not all day, every day, but you do have to be around. Like I said, every Monday and Thursday, that's where you can find us, is out here moving these chickens after Ben has worked all day. So it's a commitment. And that goes if you're doing a small batch for your family or as many as we are. It's a commitment. It's hot and heavy, time-consuming work for a short amount of time. Now, if you go into some of the more like Freedom Rangers, the time stretches out a bit. I'm talking about Cornish Cross are the 7 to 8 weeks. So it's going to be even longer if you go with some of those. So just take that into consideration. I decided, I think last year we did a batch or 2, but we had 2 kids getting married as well. So we just knew our limitations. This year we're like, let's try and let's do 5 batches. So we've got them piggybacked. It's about to stop. This batch goes next week and it's about to stop. And then our next batch will come a week later. So we're going to have a big gap because you can see based on what I told you earlier, some should be ready to move in here. We don't even have them yet. So we're going to do 2 fall batches. This is batch 3 for the spring/summer batches. So this is not the most we've ever done. We've done this one other time, but we did huge batches all at once, and it was just too much to get them moved out here. It was just too much all around. So we decided to go with these 300 to 400 batches 5 different times. and it's working out. I would say you can go too big and burn yourself out and get to the point like I did where you're like, I hate this, I never want to do it again. So I think we found the balance, and it's going pretty well. I want to end this video, give you some actual numbers of how it turned out and some things, if you're actually thinking about doing this, some reliable numbers that you can plug in and figure out how to figure up how much these cost. So if you decide to give this a go for, to sell a few, to pay for yours, or maybe you have a market, maybe you're going to wholesale to some markets, or maybe you're just going to raise some for your family. You can do a batch of these in your backyard. They're not like noisy, going to start crowing and stuff like a laying rooster would right away. I'm not going to say they would never crow, but you could definitely do this in your backyard. Now they do smell, and you do need a way to move them around. The first time we did them, we didn't know that we were going to need to move them. And you can't just leave them in a stationary spot. It will get nasty really quickly. But let's say you do them and you're wanting to know how to figure up what you have in them. Well, for one, to get started, you're going to need some structures. So you can see we did a lot of sweat equity, elbow grease to get the things that we have. You can see some of them are not the prettiest, but they're very, very functional. Ben is a handy guy and makes very functional things. So he's always thinking about how it all can work better. It might not always be on top of his list of how is that going to look? Is that going to be cute and pretty? But it's always going to make your life easier if he builds it for you. So you can see back behind me, that's just a greenhouse. But that meant we bought a used greenhouse. I'm not sure if it had ever been put up. But it was bought for somebody, and then they backed out, or one of those type deals. And so we bought it online, and so it'd been sitting for a bit. So when we went to put it together, it was a bit of a hassle getting it all kind of to fit together. But that's how things are when you save money. It's not going to be like brand spanking new, or else just go buy brand spanking new. If you're saving the money, there's going to be some quirks and hiccups. But we got it. Like I said, you can see them back there. The thing is huge. It does a great job. It's held up for years and years. We have had to change the tarp once. And then our brooder is simply an old 18-wheeler trailer that we converted. We wound up putting a floor in it and painting it with something to make the floor waterproof. It's got the water system. It's got heaters. It's got a fan, all the things. The door raises, and we've made some chicken wire like panels to put in the end for when the door's up, or the door can be down if it's cold outside. You're also going to have to think about, am I going to have these processed? And if you are, you're going to have to kind of do like I did and work backwards from your processing dates. If not, you're going to have to think about, how am I going to process these? Do I want some equipment? Do I want a plucker? Do I want a scalder? Those types of things. So you're going to need to invest in those. You're not necessarily going to be able to spread all of that infrastructure out over your first few batches of chickens. That's just something, in my opinion, will come back to you in time of making profit on chickens, but you can't tack all that on to your first batch per se. So if you're just talking about raising chickens, not your infrastructure and all that, you're going to want to consider the cost of your birds. Now, I can't give you my cost and my numbers for this because mine are going to be different from yours. I mean, I can tell you if you're just wanting to know, and I may do that here at the end, but ours are going to be different. They may ship further to me, and my shipping may be a lot more. But you're going to have to consider the cost of your birds. Now, when you go into the end and start figuring up how much you have in this batch, you're going to have to take the cost of the birds that died. So whatever the hatchery charged you is going to get spread amongst what you have living at the end. That's not typically too bad because they're not that expensive, but do just keep that in mind. You can't just say, well, 100 of them, I think I paid $2, but did you buy 200 or 300? You got to take that into consideration. Then you got to take into consideration your feed costs. And like I said, if you estimate 13 pounds per bird. Now, if you're buying your feed by the bag, it's not going to matter because when you get to the end and you see, hey, I've got enough feed to feed these out the rest of the way, you're just going to stop buying feed. Now, if you're buying in bulk, you might want to be a little more conservative. Like for us, we don't buy it all at one time. We buy little bits at a time. And then when it comes down to the end, if we see, hey, we thought we were going to have to buy 3 or 4 more tons, we really only need 1. That's a bonus and a win for us. So just keep that in mind. Don't overbuy on the feed either, because then you're just kind of going to be stuck with it. Then your processing costs. Are you going to pay someone to process for you? Like, I have my numbers here in front of me. So the last batch, which I had some of it made into sausage, some of it made into ground chicken. I had things deboned. All of those things cost money at a processor. I paid about $1,500 and I had 300 birds. So you can see the processing alone was about $5 per bird. So my first batch, I had $11.83 in a bird by the time I was done. So when people get, you know, riled up over the cost of a farm fresh chicken, it costs the farmer, and that is paying yourself nothing for doing all the work, almost $12 per bird. The second batch, I had $11.98 per bird, but I had more things cut up and done at the processor that cost more money. So anyway, that's just some things to think about. I'm going to take you up and show you these 2 batches. So one batch was about 300 birds, and no, I'm sorry, I misspoke. That last batch wound up being 232 birds for $1,500. So it was more than $5 per bird. So actually about $6 per bird. So anyway, I wound up with about 283 in the first batch and 232 in the second batch. So over 500 birds, but just over. I'm going to take you up in my walk-in freezer and show you what about 500 birds looks like. Now, keep in mind, when I take you in there, I've also got my market full of chicken as well. So some of every little thing. So I wound up with thighs, drumsticks, wings. You can get wing sections. You can get, I got ground chicken, ground sausage, chicken breast, chicken tenders, whole chickens. And there's so much more you can get. You can get boneless, skinless thighs. You can get boneless, skinless drums. You can get, you make anything boneless and skinless these days, I think. So you can get all kinds of flavors of sausages and links and brats and all kinds of things like that. But I'm going to show you just what 500 birds looks like in my freezer. I'm actually in my walk-in freezer. I'm sorry if it echoes in here, but I want to show you what I wound up with as far as finished product. There is 2 batches in here at this point. So from the 2 batches, and these boxes hold about around 50 pounds each. You can see from that stack of 5, then 3 more, and 4 more, and 5 more. We're still on chicken. 2 more, and 4 more. And then we spin around here. These are all whole chickens from batch number 2. So you can see I wound up with a lot of chicken. Today we're in here grabbing some chicken thighs. These are like 1.5 pound packages. You can see how nicely packaged it is when you have someone do it. You can definitely do this yourself, but I just do want to warn you, it is a lot of work. This right here is, if I can get this open, the most popular part of the bird. If you're going to sell any boneless, skinless chicken breasts, it's what everybody wants. So that's a lot of chicken. The last batch, I was going to take you in my market and just show you, but there's people in my parking lot already because I'm about to open. The whole birds wind up being about 6 pounds clean. That's a big chicken, y'all. They grew out really, really well. And that's a lot of chicken to feed a lot of families. I wound up getting about 150 of those in the last batch. And that's obviously going to be cheaper if you use a processor just to do whole birds, rather than them having to break it down, cut it up, package it into all the things, debone it. Everything you do adds money. But if you're going at it from a market perspective, those are things people are looking for. They're buying them at the store, and most people would love to support a local farmer. So that's why I try to get a little bit of variety, just because people are looking for those things and they want to support you. I hope that is a little bit helpful on kind of the process of raising chickens. I didn't speak too much about loading them up and taking them. So we'd load them up at night when it's cooler, and then we take them the next morning. Ben's been doing that part. He takes them about 5 to 6 o'clock the next morning when it's still relatively bearable outside, drops them off. They process them right then. And then our processor does what's called air chilling. They don't dump them in like water to chill them. They're not water chilled, they're air chilled. That's something you might want to ask for if you're thinking about using a processor. It's a much better process for the way your meat turns out. And then we take our crates home usually that day, and then it's about 10 days later we go back and pick up the final product. The last first two batches we've done, it's been about 30 boxes. So I was going to look on this and tell you what those 232 chickens wound up to be, because they give me all this detail. And I love it because I'm a numbers person. So the finished weight, they give you the chill weight was 1225. The finished weight is 1100.53, because once some moisture draws out of them and they're fully frozen and stuff, that's their final weight. So 1,100 pounds out of 232 chickens. That's pretty good. And I just want to encourage you guys, if you're thinking about doing this, you can. We started with just 20, 30, 40 in our backyard, and it's just grown from there. Anybody can do it, and it doesn't take thousands of dollars of infrastructure. You can build a $50 chicken tractor in your backyard and do just the same as we're doing. And if you need help, comment below, send me an email. I'll be glad to try to answer any questions that you have. I'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks for watching, and God bless. Oh, and when it's 100 degrees outside, say a prayer for me out moving these chickens. See ya.